Art-Centric Podcast with Rafi and Klee.
Hola, you amazing artist. It's Rafi.
And Klee.
And today we're going to talk about making time. We're going to talk about time, art, all that stuff. Basically trying to figure out ways to give yourself more time to be able to juggle your art with the time that you do have. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a really interesting, an interesting podcast because right now I am going through a process where I'm reevaluating and figuring out stuff. And I know that if you guys have been following me for a while, you know that this is something that comes up every once in a while where there's like reevaluation where you start looking at stuff. Mm-hmm. So in this podcast, I want to share some stuff with you, that things that I'm thinking about in this process in order to give myself more time in the studio. As you know, we recently bought a house, and by recently, I mean about 2 years ago, we bought this house and moved in, opened an art studio, and, you know, the whole 9 yards. And there's still a lot of work that needs to happen with the house. So in my art career before this, it was basically the art studio was in, you know, our whole house, our whole apartment was an art studio, and everything that happened creatively would happen in this, you know, this room. So basically you woke up in the morning and you were in an art studio. So there was usually, you guys have heard me say this before, where like I work on several works at once. So every morning I get up, have my coffee, walk into the studio, and there was artwork waiting for me to work on it.
We were also renting.
Yeah.
And we were also in such a tight space that we were doing very minimal hosting.
Yeah.
So things have changed on the family end over time. Things have changed as far as home ownership, and things are ever evolving. So you guys know, a lot of you guys know that once a year we do a major, usually around somewhere in January, February, we do a major brain dump of everything we do, and evaluation and overhaul. But sometimes you have to revisit that more than just once a year.
I would say that if you're looking at what you got going on and you are finding yourself stressing out, then it's time to reevaluate. Because obviously anybody here that has flirted with burnout or has experienced full-on burnout knows how easily that could turn your creativity into a big pile of junk. Mm-hmm. Like it doesn't work. And instead of looking forward to doing stuff, it almost feels like A, oh God, there's all this stuff I have to do, and B, I never can do enough to get it done. That's a really bad place to be. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about reevaluation and why that's important. And by the way, you guys, if you're listening to this at home, we have our amazing Rogue Artist family here with us. And so if you hear us reading comments of their great insight, questions, anything that they share with us, then that's where it's coming from. We're not just talking to ourselves.
They make this podcast excellent.
They do indeed.
This is a great use of our time.
Yes, it is. I think to myself that so recently, here's what's going on right now, right? So along with getting the studio set up, the studio is in a place where it's set up. And if you've been listening, you know that recently we had the issue with the back getting in. So I had to do a lot of maintenance where I was like covering up holes in the studio to make sure that no critters were getting in. And then some of you that have been following us for a while, for a long time, know that in Pensacola, Florida, after the hurricane, we had an issue with the small gnats getting in, the phorid flies, right? Klee called them poo faces, because they like things that are...
I've called them all kinds of names.
Yes. We're not going to talk about the names that they get called. But what happened was that some of the windows that led down into the basement were partially open. So there was a lot of leaves and debris. And so like next thing you know, the studio here is full of
Of those
these
buggers.
bugs.
Especially right now because it's been hot and humid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then it's like, all right, well, I get to go ahead into the studio. Now there's all this maintenance. Now I got to do this window maintenance, and I got to figure out what to do with the window wells. And of course, that's just, you could chalk that up to home ownership, right? I would say that the most challenging part for me is balancing that with other things that are going on. I have a new book that's, on the horizon that I want to release. And so I got to work on the book. And then we have our awesome Rogue membership site that for some reason I can't get the bugs worked out. So every once in a while, I just find myself doing maintenance on the site. And, anybody that runs like a large site like that knows that there's a lot of maintenance that needs to happen. The other part that I'm having a really difficult time with is messages, right? So emails, right now at this point, I have 15 different places that messages come in on YouTube, via email and all this stuff, right? So it's like when you find yourself in a place where next thing you know, the things you're doing are causing you to spend a lot of time managing stuff versus doing stuff, then you know that you're running into issues, right? And if it is something that is attached to any kind of stress, right, where you find yourself stressing out about it, then you know for sure that it's something that you have to reevaluate. And it doesn't mean that you got to get rid of it completely, but it means that you have to look and see, how can I make this easy?
Streamline
it.
Streamline or ditch it.
Exactly. Streamline or ditch it. Shan says, this month, lots of new peeps found my art and everyone wants something, and I'm having a hard time saying no to keep my sanity. That is a very interesting one, because that was I want to say in the beginning, that was one of the first things that happened. I started to get overwhelmed because I started to get popular.
Which, congrats on getting discovered
Yes.
by people. It's a good problem to have, but it still is something to be looked at for sure.
Now, one of my fixes for that was to realize that when I started to get in demand, then it meant that it was time for my prices to go up. So basically, anytime that I've had spikes in popularity, at that point, it's almost like I would price my work a little bit higher, like I'd go up a percentage to try and dissuade people from trying to order stuff from me.
Which sometimes works. And
Which sometimes
doesn't.
works, and sometimes it just makes things. It's surprising how there have been times where I've raised my prices, and next thing you know, all of a sudden the demand goes up even more.
Another thing to look at there is trying to be as realistic as possible with your timelines. I used to try to get everything completed and out the door for everyone, regardless of its complexity level, within 2 weeks. And I found that was just completely unrealistic for me. And there are some cases where I can do that, and then there are other cases where I can't. But I started by doubling my timeline for a lot of commission work. And understanding that I can only really do 2 to 4 commissions a month. So if I already have those in queue, so then I'm looking at the next month and booking out for that. So at this point, for example, right now, anything that comes in at this point, I'm looking at November for. And it's being realistic about how much you can really do in a month.
That's a really good way to really look at that. When demand starts going up, just increase your time, because there are a certain number of things that you could work on, especially if you're taking on commissions, but also your price. Your price gets to go up. It's called organic growth when it comes to price, where when your demand goes up, the price goes up, and it's that simple. It really is that simple. Anhad said, I started my art career with 15-minute blocks of time. Now I'm finding it down to 5-minute blocks. Yeah.
It can be that way. And it can be so. One of the things that can be hard to do when you're doing multiple things, which include having some semblance of a life also, is not focusing on the other things when you're doing a thing. So, like, if things are causing you so much stress that you can't not think about them while you are working on your art, then I think streamlining or ditch certain things, but also I think practicing mindfulness is like, it's not even recommended at this point. It's like a requisite for running a business.
And here's the thing. Let's talk about that a little bit because that's important. So a lot of people, when they hear the word meditation, right, immediately you think like this whole esoteric thing, or like somebody sitting at a mountaintop and just connecting with their inner selves. And although there is truth to that, I'm not going to put that down. The reality is that a lot of us don't have a handle on our stickman, on our brain, on our thoughts, things like that. We're just not trained to do that in life. You know, you're kind of just trained to think what you think and think that's just reality and that's truth. And meditation is one of those things that trains the muscle of your brain, right? Your brain jar muscle, to focus on what you want to focus on. So, for example, sitting there focusing on your breathing or on a sound or focusing on a spot or anything, whatever it is that you're focused on, and then these thoughts come in, right? You get the thoughts, and that's the beauty of meditation, is that you get to observe your thoughts coming in.
And you can be like, not right now, I'm looking at birds.
Yeah, and it's like just focus. Now, you make it sound easy, but it's not.
It's not.
It's not easy. And a lot of people, I think that's the problem, is that they sit down to meditate, they want to clear their mind, and when it doesn't happen, they feel like a big fat failure. And that's the meditation is your thoughts coming in and you pushing them away, right? And people will use visualization, like just pretend that it's a cloud and you're just blowing it away or whatever it is. And what that does is it trains you to focus on what it is that you want to focus on without those intrusive thoughts coming in. And obviously those thoughts are there and they're always going to be there, but it's your way of being able to handle those things and say, you know what, this isn't what I'm thinking about right now. I am focused on this.
And I will say, in my personal experience, being not very practiced in this and not very good at it, if I'm being honest, but when I do make time for it, I handle everything better.
Yeah.
Like, I am much more efficient. I'm much more productive. I'm less likely to be an emotional roller coaster. So, like, I feel like everything goes much smoother because of how I handle things when I'm practicing mindfulness.
Yeah, and especially if you get your day started like that, because then you're kind of resetting the block, right? You're resetting the block, and you're then at that point reminding yourself that, okay, I get to focus on what it is that I'm going to focus on today. And, contrary to popular belief, you don't have to sit there and meditate for an hour. Like, that's just not, you could sit there for 10 minutes, 5 minutes,
yeah.
15 minutes, just as long as you're taking an active role in, like, okay, let's do a little bit of brain training today and focus on what I want to focus on.
That way, when you are doing a thing, you can be fully focused doing the thing, which is going to mean you're doing the thing more efficiently, and you're going to find that you can do more things before you reach stress levels. Shan was saying, I was thinking of putting a cue on my site to give peeps transparency. I'm curious how you would visually depict the cue. Like, would it be the name of the project? Or would it be the name of the client? In my personal opinion, and this is just how I do things, clients don't care about, nor do they want to hear about your other clients.
Yeah. They don't care.
They only want to know how long their thing is going to take and what their process. So I've made it a point to never even mention other clients to my clients. I may on occasion say, I'm wrapping up some other commissions right now, so here's where I'm booking as far as that goes. But discussing anything further than that, I have avoided because it's really just telling people stuff they don't need to know kind of thing.
In the spirit of this podcast, too, I am going to add that sounds really good. You know, I've thought of doing something like that in the past, Shan, and then I realized that was just one more thing that I had to do
To manage.
Yeah. So like whenever you're thinking of stuff like that, think of scaling up, right? And usually what I do is like, okay, so that works if I have 1, 2, or 3 people. What if all of a sudden I have 100, right? And how am I going to manage that on my site? And for a lot of us, a lot of times it's hard to think, you know, I would have never thought when we got started that we would be where we're at in our career, and let alone, you know, be in that place with YouTube. Like we weren't expecting anything to come from YouTube.
No.
Barely anybody commented, you know, social media, same thing. And now I'm in a place where it's like, you know, because I didn't think of scaling up, well, what if we get, you know, at this point, now I am thinking about it. Well, what if we do have 1 million subscribers and the comments go up, you know, 1,000-fold? Like, what am I going to do with that?
Is it feasibly scalable? And if you sit there and you think this is not scalable, then it's time to try and figure out a way to make it scalable.
Or
cut it off.
Shan
Chan said, I have a page, it's like blog style, what working on. So maybe just saying there when commissions will reopen. That's not a bad idea. I've seen people do that.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, currently commissions are closed.
Yep.
They will resume, yada, yada.
Yep.
That's a great idea.
You could also, if you have any kind of banner on your site, you could also add that on the banner and give a prediction of when commissions might open up so that people could check back as well.
And most importantly, I think, is communicating with the individuals, and depending on your stress levels, like it's going to affect it. An example, so you might have commissions that take you a month. You might have some you can do quicker. You might have some that take you an exceedingly long time. I've had commissions that took me 2 years to complete. I've had commissions that took me a year to complete. I've had times where I was really on top of communication because I was in a good headspace. I've had times where I was absolute garbage for communication, and I can't believe that the clients weren't more frustrated. And so you go through your season.
You go through the process. You go through the process, you know, and it's interesting because it all really has a lot to do with making that time for those specific things. Obviously, what we want is to get in the studio and create stuff. But you have to give yourself plenty of, you know, one thing that a lot of people forget, and, you know, I am horrible at this, and which is why there's reevaluation going on right now, is one thing people forget is the time off, you know. And it doesn't mean that like you need to, I need 2 days a week to get it, you know, like the typical like job thing. You don't need to do that, but you do want to have it set up where your schedule is flexible enough that if you wanted to take 2 or 3 days off,
it wouldn't it wouldn't ruin you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Rafi and I have opted in recent times, I guess means like a few years, that we don't take days off, but we do take breaks during the day. And so that's how we've been operating. And neither one of us has really felt like, oh, we need a day off really badly, which I'll revisit in a second. We love what we do. So it's not like, oh, we need days off. So we do work 7 days a week, but we also make sure we take breaks. We make sure we enjoy coffee outside in the morning. We make sure that at some point in the evening, we are unplugged and we're no longer available via email, and we're doing whatever we're doing. We try to aim for like early evening. Sometimes it's later in the evening, but we try to find a balance there. So rather than taking days off, we're taking breaks. But back to what you said, if you have a system in place where taking one sick day or taking one day off completely destroys your workflow, that is unacceptable. And that is what we're kind of realizing right now is the case, because we are juggling so much. There's a workshop in a month,
Yeah,
and
we
there's
have, yeah.
family stuff. There's a lot going on that I realized, like, oh, I have loaded up each day so much that one day missed is like, it's a domino effect. And that's what needs to be looked at. And I think part of that has to do with how communication's flowing in and flowing out.
Part of it is that, you know, a lot of what happens is that you start doing this thing and you get excited about other things, or you think to yourself, you know, depending on where it comes from, it could be from like your mind where you're like, you know, it would be really profitable is if I did this thing, or like whatever it is. And so you take on new and additional projects. And for a lot of us getting started, it's like the idea of just working on a commission versus like experimenting with art, or like working on a series that you're working on, that could be challenging. And if you don't have a handle on that, then like adding things, like let's say that you're a multi-creative and you want to add books and music and different things like that, you do have to also add in time for you. You know, for example, right now we have some friends that are in town. We'll have some friends in town in a
Late
couple
September.
weeks, late September. So it's like looking at the schedule right now, I'm like, well, shit, we don't have, you know, we have a workshop that we're getting ready for. I want to release a book. We've got these other things. You're working on a song. We've got studio things going on. So it's like there's just no time for taking time to not do anything. And that's unacceptable. That's unacceptable.
Yeah, that essentially means that we have pushed it too far. And here's the thing that I've observed is we'll scale it back. Like just about every year we scale it back, and then we try to build in 2 days off into the weekly schedule, understanding that on occasion we're going to fill those days with business related stuff, but the idea is, like Mary was saying, to take that time for domestic arts, like dishes and laundry and yard work and groceries, and also taking time for self-care, and also taking time to just go out, you know, go around town or go somewhere. And then little by little, we will fill those days with business related stuff because they're wild card days. And in our efforts to get ahead of the game, we'll like, oh, well, we've got these 2 days, so we can just like throw that on there.
And then next thing you know, we add days that are, you know, in between those days. And next thing you know, we don't have any days that are left to like do stuff, you know, to just be like, you know what, I'm not doing anything today.
I would say that's the thing we've been the worst at, is like filling up our wild card days with stuff, being really lackadaisical, not protecting the wild card time.
I think if there's anything really that we want to get across in this podcast, is that the being an artist, or, you know, taking on additional projects and letting your life, you know, as a creative flow into the directions where like creativity is this thing that flows with you, you know, that part of that is managing. And if there is a big chance, if you're anything like me, and I guarantee you that you guys, you know, you're going to be variations of this same thing, because it's just the way that society is, where it's like when you're working, you know, this is on. And that's the thing, even till this, like right now, a lot of jobs require you to take work home with you. And so you don't really get days off. Sure, on paper, you're not getting paid for Saturday and Sunday, but Saturday and Sunday, chances are there's a portion of that day that you're working on stuff. And it's easy to fall into that mentality, especially when you are an entrepreneur where you're working for yourself, right? You're going to want to fill every single gap in with necessary components of what needs to happen.
Shan wants to know, what about balancing stuff due, like commissions and experimenting? Like, what is your ratio of time given to each? I would love to tell you that it's 50-50, but how it's been for me for the past several years is 90% commissions and 10% experimenting. And I would like to get that down to like 75% commissions and 25% experimenting, and perhaps even 50-50 at some point.
I would say for me, it's not like that. For me, it really depends, because like I'm not going to, I may have a lot of the commissions that I'll have are like my made to order, like the prints and stuff like that. And that will take me a couple hours to work on. But while I'm working on that, I usually have several other pieces going, and it really depends. If I've got a few commissions, then it'll be like maybe 70% commissions and 30% experimentation. If I have one commission, then it's just, that one commission, and the rest of it is just me creating. So it shifts. And that for me has always been the healthiest way to deal with it. Like when I have a lot of commissions, knock out my commissions. And the in-between space in the studio is always just working on experimentation.
Now, one of the fun built-in ways that you can kind of have your cake and eat it too is to take some challenging commissions. So like a lot of my commissions have experimentation built into them because I'm doing something that I haven't done before. So then in that case, it's kind of both, right?
Yeah.
Like I get to try something, see how it goes, build a prototype before I build the final thing. And so in that way, I'm kind of ticking both of those boxes. But it really does depend on how you work and what your workflow looks like, because my workflow is different from Rafi's. So like I have less experimenting than I would like to, but at the same time, I do get it in there.
Well, some of the commissions you have now are like major experimentation.
They're all experimentation.
They're all experimentation. So that's one of the reasons too that I will say when you're taking on commissions, make sure that it is something that you want to work on. And I get it, you guys, when you're starting your art career, ideally you want to say yes to as much as you can, right? Because you're building your foundation, but also you want to be specific about what kind of commissions you take on.
Valerie said, I'm having such a hard time with my art biz and my full-time corporate side hustle. I need to reevaluate for sure, but absolutely struggling with how to make this work.
And that's the thing, Valerie. The fact is that like when you have a corporate side hustle, right? And for anybody that's listening to this that doesn't know what a corporate side hustle is, that's your job.
Your JOB.
Yeah. So if you have a corporate side hustle, you have limited time to work on your art career. And that's where you want to be very specific. And I think that that's the important thing, right? Because what happens to a lot of us is that we hem and haw, like I'll give you an example. Doing the YouTube videos don't stress me out whatsoever. They don't stress me out. I know exactly what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, what's going to happen there. Working in my studio, working on commissions doesn't stress me out. I spent, all that process, all those years dealing with stress and like reducing the amount of stress that happens with that. What I am stressed out about is the stuff that I don't have a handle on. And so, that with a schedule like that, where you have maybe a schedule that's locked in stone, what might be beneficial for you is to also give yourself a schedule when it comes to your art career. You've heard us before say I'm not good with schedules, but that's because we fully work for ourselves. But if on days like today, where we have a podcast at 2:00, a live stream at 6, today things are scheduled, right? I have work that needs to happen that is part of the membership site and things like that needs to happen by noon so that we're ready for this stuff. And if I have any studio stuff to do, then it's going to happen between this time, and then I make it a point to get in there. So when it comes to that, where you do have some kind of schedule that requires you to go somewhere else, then you're going to want to tack on your creative schedule to that, right? Mm-hmm. So things like that, like, answering email and stuff like that happens after coffee, whatever time coffee happens.
So actually I know a couple of people that do this. Our neighbor who had a full-time JOB for her whole life doing like some seriously dangerous, laborious work. she would always, so she had it scheduled out where she would go in the afternoon to the job, and she said basically I devoted the mornings to the art, and then the job got whatever I had left.
Whatever was left over.
Another one of our Rogue fam kind of rearranged it where like her art time begins at like 4 a.m. and then stretches until she goes into like the corporate side hustle.
Yeah.
Because she knows that she's most creative and inspired during the wee hours. And so I think it's a good thing too to ask yourself when you are juggling, well, when am I naturally the most creative and inspired, and can I rearrange things around that
Yeah.
to work with that so that I'm not pulling away from or picking into that time where I want to be creative. For a lot of people, it's getting into it before you have to go like to outside land and do the job thing.
And what's really important, Valerie, is that you don't allow yourself to feel that the job is taking away from your creativity. You know what I mean? Because that's the emotional aspect of it could be a thing that really runs you down, right? And it could be the reality of it, you know, but at the end of the day, it's mindset. It's like, am I going to allow my job to reduce my creative time because I am allowing myself to think that my job has that kind of power over my creative time? And that all happens inside the mind. And really, it's only you that could determine, like, can I change my mindset about this, or is it time for me to find a different side hustle? You know,
Sometimes,
that's gonna do, you know, but really, it's for you to think about and determine.
Jenny said, I have a mindfulness story. I was told to do one simple, repetitive thing while focusing to keep both parts of my brain focused as long as possible. I ate a whole rotisserie chicken and didn't realize
That's
it.
amazing.
I love that story. And also, I think this is the reason that I like physical, laborious tasks such as like mowing. Because mowing is a great opportunity for meditation. Dishes, Rafi likes dishes for meditation. And also there are some aspects of my studio work that are very meditative, like knotting pearls. And so I do grab those opportunities where I find them in daily life.
And I like to call it walking meditation.
Yeah.
Right? I think I did a video on this a couple years ago, where it's like you take those things that like don't require you to like really think about the thing that you're working on, those things that are repetitive, like washing. I don't need to think about how I'm going to wash the dishes. That's mostly muscle memory. And so you take those moments and you, instead of sitting there and being like, oh, now I have to do this or whatever, take those moments as an opportunity to meditate, to just clear your mind as much as possible and just see what kind of thoughts are coming in, because that's the beauty. I love meditating because it really tells me what is the thing that I am like most focused on right now. What am I stressing out about? I don't need to stress out. These are the thoughts that are coming into my head. So it really allows you to understand what's going on inside the brain jar.
Tempest said picking work back up after vacation or a long weekend is super difficult for me, but the vacations are important in their own right. I need to get better about those transitions.
And be easy on yourself, because it's okay. Sometimes,
I find it difficult too.
Sometimes you need to build that momentum back up, but also what matters is that you allow yourself the space to do it, because the mind is tricky. Like, we can easily have the tendency to beat ourselves up about just about anything, right? So it's like you go on vacation and then your brain is going to be like, well, you should be working on blah, blah, blah. Or you decide to take a day off and your brain is like, well, you should really be doing this. And it's like, you took a day off for a reason. You know, you took a day off because you're like, I'm tired or whatever it is. And then you're going to sit there and beat yourself up. So it's really important to second guess the stuff that your brain is telling you that you should do.
Most definitely. I also try to, if I'm coming off of a break, whether it was scheduled or unscheduled, I try to ease myself back in by doing like the easiest, least, like do the least, to like dip a toe in and then like let momentum kind of gradually catch you.
Valerie said, exactly. That emotional thing is real. Yes, it is. I also have my first pop-up market this Saturday, so I'm extra anxious. You're going to do great. You're going to do great. If you weren't anxious about the market coming up, your first pop-up coming up, then you were doing something wrong. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it is, we still till this day, like when we go and do a show, and we've done, I can't even tell you how many, but it's probably over 1,000 shows. We still will like get there super early because we want to get the lay of the land. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
we want to get our footing so that we feel comfortable. Because we know that like anything you could get somewhere and you're like, well, where the hell am I supposed to park, or like any of those things.
You just never know when you're going to trip over a cactus. That's
Yeah,
how I like to say
exactly.
it. Which I almost did before Rafi's Luna opening.
Yes.
Lisa said, washing dishes is my time to listen to Rafi and Klee podcast.
Aw.
Inert Flow said, I love a quote from the Shaolin master Heng Yi. I butchered that name, I apologize. Any mundane act should be an act of mindfulness.
Yeah, exactly. Like for me, whenever I need to process information, I need to go for a walk. And it's usually just a walk. I'm just walking, and it's almost like it's an automatic mindfulness meditation. I'm looking around, I'm paying attention to what my thoughts are, I'm trying to get rid of them, and I'm just trying to like calm my thinking. And I do my best sorting problems, not consciously thinking about stuff, just taking a walk and clearing my mind.
Mm-hmm. Shan said, I am most creative in the early morning when there's dew and soft light. Why is it so inspiring? I think, obviously, it's just beautiful, right? So it puts us in like a calm, I feel like it's good for calm mindfulness and creativity, but also I feel like there's that period of time when you first wake up where the whole day lies ahead of you. And before you have a chance to overwhelm your stuff, it feels like unlimited potential
Yeah.
before you.
One of the things that I think I want to try and figure out is like, so if there's stuff, and we do this full time. So if there's stuff that I need to like figure out, like respond, like the businessy stuff, it's like, all right, well, I want to for me, I am most creative when I get into studio. Like that's really the reality of it.
I guess we've trained ourselves to kind of just switch it on.
Yeah, we've trained ourselves to switch it on because it's just how we've done it for years.
Which you can do. If you think you can't, you absolutely can.
Yeah, so for me, it's like, all right, well, let me get all this stuff out of the way, preferably by 11 o'clock, so that now I've got the rest of the day to do whatever it is that I'm going to do in the studio and just be creative. And so, like, that's, and that's obviously just an idea. I will get back to you and let you know how that works out for me. But it's one of those things where you're constantly kind of like, you're figuring it out as you go. And I think you got to be easy on yourself. It's like, all right, when am I most creative? When can I do this? Marty says, my side gig ebb and flows, even temper that have energy and focus on art business stuff, because I think, well, the other gig is good money, hard to let go, meditate on that too. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like thinking about those things and really understanding that everything that has to do with your side gig, everything that has to do with your art business, everything that has to do with those are your thoughts, and it's really comes down to your perspective and what do you want your perspective to be. Obviously, if you're at a job and it's a toxic situation, then you got to account for that. You got to take care of that. Or if you're in a toxic situation, you want to account for that. But I would say that 90% of the time, just a switch in mindset will really, really help the way that you feel about whatever it is that you're doing. Like, I know that 90% of what I'm going through right now, feeling overwhelmed, is my mindset. So that'll be the first thing that I do when I'm reevaluating. It's like, well, could I change my perspective on this to make it much more empowering?
And from that shifted perspective, you will come up with way better solutions like to streamline things than you will from a place of overwhelm.
Exactly.
Shan Chan said, Oakley's so smart. Yeah, I think is true. Then you can relate it to the future / life. So I have a very clear understanding of what my ambitions are in the morning. And I have a very clear understanding of what my worries are at night. And that is my circadian rhythm.
I would say in the evening, or not in the evening, after coffee, you're clear of your ambition. Because I've gone downstairs sometimes and you're like, I don't know where I am.
I don't know where I am before coffee. No, in fact, I wander around aimlessly sometimes. And sometimes things get done as I wander. But it's very
Subconscious.
it's very subconscious.
Jenny said, I save all my dishes for the morning because for some reason it's calming and
An entryway to the day.
yeah, that's funny. That's when, so I'll pop in my audiobook and that's usually when I'm doing my meditation, and that's the best time for me is in the morning to wash dishes. I feel like I'm resetting my day. So I'll like wash dishes, fold the blankets that go on the chair, maybe vacuum a little bit.
It's the reason that I make our bed
Yeah.
every day. It's that feeling like done. And I like how it looks when I walk in there.
Inert Flow said, I love the quote. Meaning, if you're walking, enjoy the walk. If you're doing dishes, feel the water, the roundness of the dish. Simple mindfulness is a life goal. Yeah. Yeah, most definitely.
Work or chores before coffee is reducing trauma and stress. Reducing trauma and stress. I think I read that differently in my mind and then got confused.
Valerie says coffee is magic.
Then coffee, you can relax. I do putz around like while I'm waiting for the coffee to do its thing. I will like water our plants, fold a blanket, run some laundry upstairs, run some laundry downstairs. Like do the little things that you don't really have to know where you are or think about too hard. Make the bed.
I do quite a bit before coffee. I usually get a few things done. I don't wake up, like when I wake up, I might be a little bit tired and I'm looking forward to coffee, but I also like starting my day and getting things done before coffee. And then when it's coffee time, I get to sit down and enjoy coffee on the front porch with Clee. So that, that's the thing. It's like forming these different habits that make you feel good. That way, if something is off. If you're like, I have not been able to get into the studio, and that's the thing too, you guys, you gotta be easy on yourself about that too. So if you're not able to get into your studio and work on some stuff because some things are happening, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you find yourself like you feel like you can't catch up, then you definitely have to reevaluate and consciously look at that schedule and decide like, okay, what's going to work here? And really, you got to decide what it's going to be for yourself. Like you would think a lot of people are like, Rafi, a block schedule. I'm like, block schedules do not work for me.
We tried it though.
We tried it. We tried different variations of it. And the thing is that a block schedule, I know that it could be absolutely successful for someone because I know people that use the block schedules, but it just doesn't work for us.
Yeah.
So like it's better to like figure it out. That's why I love looking up like different ways that people schedule out their day or do things. And I figured out that flexibility is a must for us.
I typically will throw 4 things on my plate for any given day. Like one thing in each of the 4 major areas that need my focus. The house, the admin business, the jewelry, the music, and then media stuff if we have media stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of like a block schedule, but one of those things is usually the main priority of the 4.
And because Marty asked, what is a block schedule? So Marty, what you do is you create these blocks, right? And you do 24 hours, 24 blocks, right? And so it'd be like 12 a.m., 1 hour, and you write down when you sleep, typically when you sleep, when, if you're going to have breakfast, when, so you take a look, you're able to physically see how it is that you spend your time. Like if you have a job, I work between this time and this time.
It's good to see, like, have a visual representation of what you're doing with your time.
So that's the benefit that we got from trying the block schedule, was to have that visual representation, especially for me because I'm very visual, right? So I need to be able to see something in order to really understand what's going on. And the whole concept of 24 hours a day is very, you're not seeing it. So the block schedule really allows you to see like what time you spend when doing whatever. And what we did was we would color in. So like for blue would be like, this is our sleep time. This is when we get up and have coffee. This is, studio time. This is this kind of time.
I think a block schedule is a really workable solution for a lot of people. And I would say that we are doing a version of it. It's just a looser version of it.
It's a very flexible version.
It's like a block framework.
Yeah.
Not a block schedule. Because blocking things down to the 15-minute increment or hour increment was actually adding an additional task into my day of like watching the clock and preparing to switch gears, if that makes sense. And instead, the block framework is like, these are the 4 priorities, and of these 4 priorities, this is the one that gets the star. Like, this is the most, or these are the 2 most important things. And going from there, like yesterday we did an absolute megaton of things. But they just kind of flowed into each other because we just it was loose.
Yeah.
So keeping it loose. And I think trying these different things out and seeing what works for you.
And that's the thing. It's like, try not to be, for me, it's like not being specific. And I've said it before, right? Because a block schedule deals with time. So that's great because you're able to take a look at how it is that you spend your time. I, however, am terrible at managing time, and I think everybody out there is terrible at managing time because time is relative. Like, sometimes it feels like you have a lot, sometimes it feels like you don't have enough. And I think really that's why for me it's giving yourself 4 things to do, knowing full well that you might accomplish some more things as you do them, you write them down. But, Shan asked, when do you talk about it on a typical day? Usually when we're having coffee, we'll be like, what's going on today? How do you communicate? Through words. We speak.
If Clea has a show, can you see it on her calendar?
I mean, we each have our own planner, right? And when we sit down and we talk about like what's going on this week, we'll both fill in whatever is going on in our separate planners.
That way we each know what's going on for each of us.
Yeah.
Like, I know Rafi has a podcast coming up later this week that it's just him, but I need to know that he's doing that so that I can plan accordingly.
Right.
And so on and so forth. So yeah, we usually do discuss that in the morning or sometimes at night while dinner is cooling off or whatever. We'll talk briefly about the upcoming day, the next day or the next couple of days.
Yeah, and if there's like a big project, like with the workshop, we'll talk about the workshop.
We're talking about,
and stuff like that. Or it'll be something where on Mondays typically we'll talk about, give a loose idea
what the week is
going to look like for me, and then Clea will let me know what the week is going to look like for her.
Yeah.
And then we try to schedule things so that we're in the same room.
We try. It doesn't always work out, but it does because we're making efforts to do so. And on occasion, one of us will be like, like, can I get a powwow about this? Because yesterday or the day before, I said, like, I need to figure out how to get some studio time. Like, I need studio time badly.
Yeah.
So can we sort it out between going out and promoting for the workshop, going on supply runs,
getting the workshop day nailed down. Because right now we have that workshop in October, so that's taking up
and it feels like it's tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Shan wanted to know, does lunch throw you off or breaking? No, it doesn't.
No, we got very used to when you get into studio and you're working on something, there comes a point where you're like staring at the thing and you're like, or like whatever, and there comes a point where it's almost like you're telling yourself, you know what, that's good enough for right now. And then we would take a 10 to half an hour, sometimes an hour break after that. And what I'll do is I'll look at Cleo and be like, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go drink some water, sit on the
And
porch.
sometimes
or
I'm like,
whatever.
I'll be with you shortly.
Yeah, and she'll be like, I'll be with you. Or Cleo will be like, I'm ready for a break.
Yeah. And then we'll sit outside anytime that we can. I used to get real sluggish after lunch when I worked a corporate side hustle. But I don't so much now that we're like running the show. But also, because I know myself, I also know that like if I eat lunch, like in the traditional sense, I may get sleepy. So I typically don't eat lunch.
I mean,
I'll eat like a handful of sunflower seeds.
so
and
here's something to know about our eating schedule. We eat when we're hungry.
Yeah.
Like there isn't like lunchtime is scheduled, that I just I think since I left the corporate world, it was like I don't want to have a time to eat because a lot of times you just eat because it's
Because
time
to eat and they tell you when it's time to eat. Yeah.
So it'll be more along the lines of like, I think I'm going to go upstairs and make something because I'm starving right
Yeah.
now or like I'm hungry. It's like we've gotten to a point where we've trained ourselves to listen, when our body is like, I'm hungry or I'm thirsty or whatever. And
Some of you have heard my tummy growl at the end of a podcast or a live stream. I'm like, it is time.
it is time.
Let's see. Valerie said, I really like the idea of the block schedule. I'll try this. It might really help me to see what I'm juggling. Yeah. Visualization is everything for me.
It's great. And to be honest with you, it does so much more for breaking down the day because, in your schedule, like it's great because you could break down the week. I recommend to everybody to have a 5-day planner or not a 5-day planner.
A weekly planner.
A weekly planner where you could flip to one page and you have the full month. So you could kind of like, like here is the month of September. And so things that are scheduled like the podcast and stuff like that is in here, and then other things like people coming into town or there's an event going on, right? The monthly stuff where you could just kind of glance at it and what's going on, and then the weekly stuff is where we plan things. That being said, we don't fill up the days, right? So if
I
it's
used
Monday,
to, but I don't anymore.
no, if you know that something's happening during the week, then you put it on that day. But mostly, like, you sit there and you plan your day that you're in on that day.
And that includes your studio time and your self-care. And I would not accomplish anything without a planner. Like, I would not be able to function without it.
I think the most important thing, you guys, is that your planner is not your taskmaster.
It's your friend.
It's your friend, right? So that's why so you guys have heard me say the Fantastic Four list. I'll go ahead and tell you exactly what it is for anybody that hasn't heard that before. You write down the 4 things that are a priority for you to get done today, right? Or something that needs to happen. You work on that list. Once you're done with those 4 things, then it's basically a wild card. Then at that point, you could work on whatever. But let's say you get 2 of them done and the other 2 you don't get done. That's fine. You move those 2 to the top of the list the next day, and then you add an additional 2 to the bottom of that list. That means that no matter what, let's say that you're having an off day and you don't get things done, you're going to get at least those 4 things done that week. Chances are you'll get a lot more done, but it just, you don't want to be like, this has to happen today, and if it doesn't happen today, then I'm a loser. You don't want to do that. Like, get rid of all the stuff that comes with that, all the punishment that comes with like not getting things done on time. Get rid of all that crap. Like, a planner is designed to just remind you of what you want to get done so that it's not like inside your head you're trying to
Rattling
juggle it
around.
with a bunch of other things.
On hand said, I like what you're saying about planning according to priority.
Yeah.
Marty said, these are great ideas. I know myself well enough that I have to try and be loose or I rebel. And
Yes.
it might lead to nachos and Netflix.
Exactly. And you know what? There are days where I have looked at Clea and been like, you know what? I'm not doing shit today.
Mm-hmm.
Like and that's me rebelling from myself and being like, I'm not doing anything. Because I think there comes a point where you want to prove, there is that side of you that wants to prove to you that, hey, I don't need to be on all the time. I don't need to be on all the time. I don't need to be doing anything that's going to stress me out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reality of it. Whether or not you have things going on or not, like you don't need to have anything stressing you out.
I also think I just want to interject that a planner helps you, some kind of visual representation of what you have going on helps you communicate with other people, whether it's clients or it's community, or people just want to know if you're available, right? Can you come to our board meeting, or can you attend this opening, or can you this and that, or you just need to like put your family member in check who's like, you never have time, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. You're like, this is what I got going on. I'm available on Saturday at 4 p.m., or, kind of thing.
Yeah.
To just really know where you are so that you don't overcommit or overextend yourself or miscommunicate, right? Double book yourself and then have to like cancel on somebody. It just really like represent your day visually somehow, I
Yeah.
think is like hugely important.
Shan says, as an ex-planner addict, I have to say, use your planner, but don't spend all your time drawing and decorating it. I have little sketches throughout the planner, and I'll keep things in here. Like this is me. There's a picture of me sitting on the throne as Henry VIII for the bathroom. So I do love the idea of adding a little something to it, but yeah, don't spend all your time decorating it.
Ginny said, my deep dive creative time arrives naturally after 7:30 p.m. and then suddenly it's 2:30 in the morning. Also, they say it's a psychological trick to make your bed each day to start and end in an organized space.
Yeah.
Yes, I've become fond of the ritual.
For me, I think that's a big part of it is like I need to have my reset time. So, for example, with like videos or anything that's going on the computer, I need to reset my desktop, right? I am horrible. Everything's on my desktop.
You're a monster.
I am. So, like, I have to like reset my desktop. Cleaning up the house, just picking up a little bit every day to help me reset the space. Also in the studio, like between projects, I have to reset my space. Because I think that when you have clutter going on around you, it just adds to the turmoil, and you want to eliminate the clutter. That's why right now with all the messages that we're getting and stuff like that, like our inboxes are crazy. So that's part of the of the reevaluation now of like, okay, this needs to be not what it is right now, because when you have any kind of clutter, it does. So yeah, making the bed is that's a great way to get your day started, because then it's done.
I'm enjoying sticky notes. This is from Marty. I'm enjoying sticky notes on a big desk calendar hung in front of me. I can move, crumble, check mark, etc.
I love it.
And then morning coffee is for detail planning that day. I love that kind of visual representation. And you can have fun with how you visually represent your day or how you organize in general. And I think the mistake in the past was looking for a one and done forever solution that was going to work.
Gail says, believe me, once you're 65, you have to write it in a planner.
I feel you. I've always been that way. I'm going to say what I said again.
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
The mistake was looking for a one and done forever solution that was
Yes.
always going to work for all time. And understanding that, like, you've got to try things, and they may or may not work, and if they work, they may work for a while and then stop working, and then you may need to try other things because you're dynamic. You're not a two-dimensional character.
No,
And
it's going to change, and life happens, and you got to move things around, and you're going to change and evolve and have different ways. It's the same thing as motivating yourself. Like, there isn't a one and done, like, oh, this thing that I do motivates me and it works every single time. Like, you're a dynamic creature. So like you're going to experience moments where that thing isn't going to work. And then you got to try something else and try something else and try something else until you hit on something. And so I think with all the tools that we talked about, that's, in my opinion, taking a look at how you spend your time is important. And, one of the things that I'm going to do with this reevaluation is look at how am I spending my time, and then which portions of that are the things that are stressing me out, because I need to eliminate that or change my perspective on it completely. So, yeah.
I think that's a good spot to cap this off.
I think so too.
And if there's anyone externally making you feel like bad or pressuring you, use your visual representation to tell them to back off.
Yeah. Draw a little picture of a bird and then give it to them.
Like, sorry, I don't have room in my planner for your drama.
But yeah, that's a good place to end. Yeah. So thank you guys for being here. The Rogue family is so awesome.
Amazing.
I always love reading your comments.
You guys
on
are
our
the
podcast.
best.
Anhan said, I've learned it helps to pad my time estimates too. Yes.
10 minutes extra
to get out of the house. 10 minutes extra to park, stuff
For
like that.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, I lived in Chicago, and usually I padded like an extra hour for parking.
I don't know how you don't pad your time. Like how you can't. That's people who are late don't pad their time.
True.
That's what happens.
Yeah, that is true.
Because you're going to have to pee before you leave the house. You're going to have to find your keys and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I like it. Pad your time.
Your time.
That's good. Thank you for adding that at the end
Yes.
here. All right, so thank you so much to the Rogues. Thank you so much to everybody at home listening to this. You guys are all absolutely amazing, and I totally adore you. And hey, if you like this podcast and you are listening to us for the first time and want to subscribe, there should be a subscribe or follow or thing button wherever it is, whatever platform you're listening to this on.
A thing button.
A thing button, yeah. And other than that, I think it's time to say bye. Say goodbye, Clee.
Good day.
Adios.